everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. This week we are continuing on with my Snow White cosplay. That is a cosplay of this D23 doll from, I think, 2017. I started this project in last week's video, and in last week's video we worked on the digitizing of the embroidery, actually stitching out that digitizing, making sure that everything works there, and then also doing the bodice mock-up. And so this week we are going to be combining all of that and actually cutting out the actual bodice, putting the embroidery on the actual bodice and sewing it all together and hopefully having at least some semblance of a bodice by the end of this week. If not, like, you know, finishing most of it. We're not gonna like finish it. Like, I don't expect to get the sleeves finished as well, but I would love to at least start on the sleeves because I'm making this for Emerald City Comic Con, and Emerald City Comic Con is coming up way too soon. It is Monday, February 16th right now, and Emerald City Comic Con starts on March 6th. That is too close for comfort. So the first thing that I have been working on this week is to finally do like the actual scaling. Normally when I take a project that is like a doll, for example, and I'm changing that into a plus size cosplay, I like to use algebra, I know, right, math, and actually find what the scale would be on me. I didn't quite do that for this. I eyeballed when it came to the embroidery design, and then I patterned it based on like what fit. Now, I already took a look at the pattern just a little bit ago here, and like looking at the pattern mock-up that I came up with from last time, I realized that that band going around the underbust, it's too narrow. Part of what made me realize that is it's actually too narrow for the embroidery. So I could make the embroidery narrower, but frankly, it looks too narrow scale-wise as well. So I'm going to increase that by 0.25 inches down at the bottom, and that will make it wide enough for the embroidery that I digitized. That said, I have now also checked scale on things because the second step was to check my bodice embroidery and see if that would fit on my bodice. It doesn't. It's a little bit too large for my bodice, but I can't really change the length of my bodice because that's the length that fits me. And I'm not a doll. I know, right? Newsflash. So we are going to tweak things a little bit. This is going to get decreased just slightly. I'm only 1 centimeter off. I am 1 centimeter too long, 1 centimeter too wide. And yes, I'm doing that in centimeters. Crazy, right? For an American, I never use centimeters, but I actually do use centimeters a lot of times when it comes to scaling something small, because that way I can zoom in on the embroidery on my phone and measure in millimeters like how long that is, because millimeters is getting me down to a smaller like amount than 1/8 of an inch, and it just makes the math a little bit easier. So I scaled that up. I am again 1 centimeter too long, 1 centimeter too wide. That's super easy. I can literally shrink that down on my embroidery machine. I don't even have to change the digitizing of that. So that is really fantastic because it's the same scale too large in both directions. So yay, that's actually really good. Now that said, I did also scale how wide that band should be. It should be actually pretty significantly wider than what I have. I'm not going to make it any wider than that extra 1/4 inch. That's just all that's gonna work with the embroidery scale of things that I have and with my body. So we're gonna make that a little bit wider. I shouldn't need to make another mock-up of that. Hopefully that's not famous last words. So now that I've done all of that scaling and puzzling, I am going to take my bodice pattern, which is all marked up with both like what the pieces are and also where I'm adding things, like adding the 0.25 inches there, adding the little bit of length to the bottom, because we talked about that last week, that right now this is hitting me exactly at my natural waist and I need this to flare out just about 1 inch below the waist. So I have that extension in. I'm also going to cut off the excess because I haven't done that yet. So there's a lot of excess in here from like mock-up number 1 before I made it into mock-up 1.5. Cut all of that down, make my seam allowances 1/2 inch, and then take this all apart and use this to cut out the lining and the outer. So I will be making this out of matte satin, and the lining might actually be the same fabric. I'm gonna see what I have in my stash. I usually do like to use a thicker lining for a bodice like this. I am not intending to bone this bodice. If I do, it will be very minimal, like maybe one piece of boning in that center front seam. But I'm not intending to bone it because I'm going to be wearing this over a corset. So I have this fitted over my 1860s corset, and I don't generally bone bodices when I am wearing them over a corset, except around lacing. This doesn't have lacing, this is getting a zipper. So I just want something a little bit more structural. This is like a heavy kind of upholstery sateen. And so I may use that, or I may see if I have something that is like blue or black, which would be kind of more my preferred color for the lining. But that said, I'm not actually going to fully cut the matte satin before I embroider it, because it is easier to take a larger piece of the fabric, actually hoop it up, mark out where my pattern is, so draw the pattern lines of where it should be with like a friction pen or a chalk pencil, chalk liner, etc., and then embroider that space, and then make sure that the embroidery has not pulled in the fabric at all, because that is pretty normal for it to have kind of shrunk in that fabric a little bit. So double check with my pattern piece that it is still the right size, and then cut it out and put it with the flat lining. So lots of steps to do. But the first thing is take this all apart and cut out some of my pieces. So I'm about to start the embroidery for the first piece, which is that bust strap piece. And as you can see, I have not only drawn out the outsides of the entire piece, I've also drawn out the inside, as in the embroidery needs to stay between these two lines. And at first I did this in friction pen. It was not really showing up. So I've done this in Choco liner, which I don't like as much because it can get rubbed off, but it's going to show up for the scanner on the machine, because my machine has a scanner and it will show what I'm looking at in the hoop and let me place the embroideries specifically in those spots. Now, one thing I had to look at looking at the embroidery right here is that it is not even on both sides. At first, I was going to choose this side with the kind of loopy spirals next to the center, but that would have meant that I would have to take the bigger motif and get it around the curve in the pattern, and it just wasn't going to curve without me redigitizing it. So I've decided to do the other way on the motif and have the little like leafy bits next to it, because the smaller motif can fit in the curve if I angle the pattern. So at least that's the plan. That's what I'm going to do. This is going to require 3 stitch outs, one to do kind of the center here because the hoop cuts off right here. So frankly, honestly, now that I said that, actually, I think I need to rehoop this because I would be in the middle of a motif if I do that. So I'm going to rehoop this. I'm going to start it probably around here. So this might actually require 4 hoopings because I'm going to have to do a hoop, and now probably a hoop as well. So that's a little annoying, but I'm going to do as much as I can at one time. Maybe I can get it so that I can get like here and then there and then there. I think that will be possible, hopefully, to do 3 because this is that middle motif right here. Right now, I would almost certainly have motif and motif, but then be cut off on both of the other sides. So yeah, I'm going to rehoop this. And we're probably going to use a lot of stabilizer trying to go through and get these into the hoops. Maybe I can use some smaller hoopings for the sides up here. And I'm trying to not cut off the length of the fabric, even though this is probably a bad idea, because I still have a lot more to cut out of this. And I don't want to like waste fabric by cutting it far enough away from the hoop, but then I'm like wasting all that. I would love to be able to stick like the center bodice motif over here when I'm done with this piece and etc. So we'll see how this goes. So of course, now that I am about to embroider, I have reached another little bit of an issue because this was what I used for my test embroideries last week. Now this is a different blue. You can see the color difference on there. It's not a lot, but it's more of a green blue. I don't feel like the camera is really picking up the difference, but it is definitely a different blue. And I used this color on it, which I did like the look of on here, and I like the look of it on the blue as well. However, it's also going to wind up being embroidered on the skirt fabric. This is the skirt fabric. And I feel like laying down the thread, this one right here, on here, it is really close. This was actually what I intended to use for the embroidery originally because I felt like this matched the skirt, but frankly, that doesn't make sense. I don't want embroidery that matches the skirt because I have to embroider on the skirt and it has to actually look like something. And you can see that one like disappears onto it. It is just too samey. This one I think is honestly the same issue. I feel like it really disappears onto there. So of these three, this one is the best one, but I think it is still too close to this. So I'm really tempted to go run up to Quality Sewing. Not like it's a run. It's like 20 plus minutes each way plus traffic. So it could take 40 minutes to get home. But I kind of think I need to go there and see if they have like the next shade paler, because I've been looking at the Floriani thread chart, which is of course not in rainbow order nor in numerical order. And I'm just like, Floriani, what are you even thinking? Because you have yellows and golds on multiple pages. I don't know how to compare these when they are not on the same page. Like, that's obnoxious, because this is the color that I used for the test. That is Old Ivory. This is the color that I was going to use. That's Goldenrod. And so I feel like maybe I need Blonde Straw, because that seems to be a shade paler than the Old Ivory. Dandelion, I feel like, would still be too bright. But then there's also like threads on different pages, which are still yellow, and that doesn't help. So I might have to go run up to Quality Sewing right now instead of doing this embroidery. So I drove up to Quality Sewing and spent a whole bunch of time hemming and hawing, looking at the different threads, looking at their like thread chart, which I even almost bought because even though it's expensive, it's like that came in really handy. And wound up choosing the thread that I already had that I used for the test stitch out, the Floriani test stitch out. It just looked the best, even though it is just about the shade of the skirt fabric. When it's all together, like embroidered, it still pops. And on the skirt, at the bottom of the skirt, it's actually two colors down there. So they were having a buy one, get one. I did not have enough left on that spool, most likely, to do this entire project anyway. So I got another spool of that, and I also got a spool that will be a contrast, a lighter shade of gold. So yeah, those are good now. It does feel a little bit like I wasted a whole bunch of time driving up there today, but I would need those eventually. So at least I took care of that and kind of solidified my view in what thread choice I needed. So let's go embroider. Here we go. I've got it all laid out. We're starting the stitch out, and I'm just going to be skipping the other rows, the other red portion on here, because I've actually layered them both over each other. Hopefully this is all like symmetrical here and it will all work out. We'll find out in 18 minutes when it finishes all three motifs. Obviously the center rose is not symmetrical because I did not digitize it to be symmetrical, because it's not symmetrical in the design. I debated about redigitizing it to make it symmetrical, but like none of this stuff is really that symmetrical. So I have all of the rest of the fabric stacked over here, hopefully not going to fall off my table. I'm probably going to babysit this for at least a little while, and we will see how this stitch out goes. Also, you might notice that I did not do the basting stitch here. I really hope that I don't regret that, especially because I feel like I am seeing a little bit of wrinkling going on here, but it's too late now. So here is the first hooping done. I don't love that this stitched on the outside for some reason. It did it there and it did it right there. Honestly, I'm probably going to try and just pick that out, but like it did it properly the first way, and then this was the flipped over one, and for some reason it did that. So not a fan of that, but otherwise I think that looks really good. Let's hoop it up for hooping number 2. My machine lied to me. According to this, everything should line up within my lines, but this just happened. It's past my line. It's not a huge deal. It's just that now I'm going to have to consciously do the other side like that as well. I know from when I used to embroider a lot that my machine has a placement error, and it's like 3 clicks to one side. So apparently it's 3 clicks to the left. I need to be 3 clicks right of where I think it should be. And that is how to get it lined up. So I'm gonna post it back on my machine. I used to have one there, and remind myself that it needs to be 3 clicks to the right. However, I now also have to match this up. So yeah, I'm on this second motif. I actually managed to get this entire piece done. Like, it's all gonna fit in here. I think I am gonna have a tiny little blank at the top. I don't think I'm gonna fill that in because it's gonna be so close to the seam at this point probably, I'm gonna have to see where the top motif ends up here, because it goes right to the top of the hoop, which is not the top of what we see up here. There's a gap of like an inch. So yeah, it's close, and I don't think I'm gonna bother putting any embroidery in that last top inch. Also, what's interesting is if we look at the doll that I'm putting on screen right here, you can see that her motifs must be smaller because it actually takes more of them to get up there. So, oh well, it doesn't matter to me that I'm taking less motifs. This is still gonna be cute. It's just that it kind of has like one less red area. Actually, what I could do in that last top inch is isolate my red motif, the little like rose part, and stick it just right up at the shoulder. I think someone wants attention, and that someone is not my embroidery machine. Whoa. Well, shoot, I unhooped this hooping and was just hooping this up to put in a red flower up here when I noticed that it felt a little bit sparse over here. And then I realized this ghost stitched 2 motifs here. So it's supposed to look like this. You can see that one and that one. And it just didn't do it. And what's weird is that that stitches out in this design earlier than this spiral. So it just like didn't catch it. You can see, maybe you can't see, I can see where the needle went through the fabric. Like there's a little traced outline of where that happened, but it did not actually stitch that out. So now I am going to have to hope that I can align this perfectly so as to get those motifs back in there, which I do not recommend. And obviously I'm going to have to find where in the pattern it actually does those and watch it just do those and then skip and do my rows at the top. That's annoying. I fixed the design. I think I may have been 1 click this way, but it's pretty darn close to where it's meant to be, so that's good. And I added my standalone red flower at the top. It is a little bit past the seam allowance line, so it's into the seam allowance. It doesn't really bother me. There was going to be no way really that I could embroider it over the seam because, you know, trying to get it into a hoop would have been really a pain. So anyway, this whole side is done, and tomorrow I will hopefully be able to match that side with this side and get it all mirrored up and perfect and finish off the underbust motif, maybe even move on to the bodice fronts. The full underbust is done. It is pretty darn close to symmetrical. I say that because like this is actually a little farther into the seam allowance than this one is over here. Beyond that, I'm having a hard time finding like asymmetrical things about them. This part maybe is slightly more in than this part. They're both over the like line that I wanted them to be, but they seem to be over equal amounts. But yeah, it looks really cool. So now instead of cutting this out, I'm going to move on to the bodice front embroidery because I think I can get some of that cut out of this area right here, probably. I still also have to cut out the bodice side backs. I have already cut out the bodice backs. They're waiting over here, but I kind of just didn't want to cut into this fabric while embroidering because it's easier to do that when it's all a piece. I finished the embroidery, which I will show you in a moment, and I just went to go start setting the machine back up for sewing. And oh my gosh, the bobbin thread chicken that I played with that without even realizing. Now, my machine does have a bobbin sensor. It works 98% of the time. So I'm really surprised that it let it get down to this because usually for embroidery, it would never let the bobbin get this low. It would have alerted like while it was still fully wrapped on the core of the bobbin. Yeah, that is like no thread left at all. I am amazed that my bobbin sensor did not go off. And I'm really glad that that stitched out successfully. That's insane. Speaking of the embroideries, here they are. You can see the fronts all here, and then I've got the band portion here. So I have the darts pinned in place right now on both of these. I have the backs pinned to the side backs. Those are going to all get sewn together at this point. Then I can add that in, and then I'll figure out exactly how that like front top piece is going to go. I have a zipper that's arriving tomorrow. I'm using a separating zipper, and so hopefully timing wise, I will get all of this done in time for the zipper to arrive, and then I'll be able to move on to sleeves. So as I'm pinning together the center fronts here, I'm kind of peeking in and also feeling for the embroidery. Again, I can't see it from this side because I've already flatlined it. So I'm just trying to make sure that the embroidery lines up on both sides. And I would rather line up the embroidery than line up the edges. So for example, at the very top, we were off just slightly. So I'm going to adjust my seam allowance here and I don't know, probably like split the difference, make it a little bit smaller than 1/2 inch on this side, a little bit bigger than 1/2 inch on the other side. And that way the embroidery will line up within there. I know you can't really see it because I've already inserted a few pins, but yeah, there's all of my embroidery in there. And again, I'm just trying to make sure everything is completely even on both sides. Ta-da! The bodice is now assembled other than that front part that goes in right here, the little white part. So I have to figure out what exactly I'm going to do with that part because I don't know that I have a good fabric for it. I probably do. I don't need very much like in that little section. It is meant to be something satiny and it needs to be a lighter weight satin just because like when we look at it, it's something that can kind of pleat slash ruche almost itself up really easily, and that's not something that can be done with a heavier weight satin like say a matte satin or probably even a taffeta. It needs to be a little lighter even than that. So I have to check through my stash and see what I even have because otherwise I might have to order something and put that off until like, you know, the fabric gets here. I had actually been looking at fabrics online for it a few days ago and then completely forgot all about the fact that I was even looking at those fabrics until earlier today. But I had not checked my stash first, which was probably why I had put off ordering it. So I'm gonna look through my stash, see what I have. Again, I don't need very much of it. Maybe if I have like, I don't think I've got a charmeuse, but just something like honestly cheapy satin probably would be okay. Silk taffeta I feel like isn't going to have the shine to it, but a silk taffeta as opposed to a poly taffeta is light enough weight that it could kind of do the crinkliness that I'm looking for. So yeah, I'm going to have a look through and see what I can find. So I decided to experiment with some poly taffeta that I found in my stash, and I think this is going to work. So at this point I have run gathering stitches, 2 gathering stitches each, top and bottom. I kind of drew out or cut out the side shape of the front bust section on one side and marked it out on the other side. And I believe that with pulling this up and then pulling it taut this way and then kind of pressing on top of that, that I should get the kind of pressed random micro pleaty sort of look that I'm going for. You know, that I think that will work. So this right now is a 2 times gather. It is 2 times the width of the piece. I think that this is enough. I'm a little bit wondering if I needed to do a little bit more than 2 times, but I'm gonna kind of press this in place and see. I can always redo these gathering stitches and lengthen it further, but yeah, I think this is gonna be okay. I'm gonna compare it with my piece that I have cut out. I have already cut out like a backing for it in this heavyweight cotton. I think this is like a drapery piece that was left over from Joann's at one point that I had like a little scrap left of, but it's a very stiff but still lightweight cotton, not like organdy. It's thicker than that, but I believe it's a drapery cotton. So yeah, I'm gonna compare it with the backing size, see if I made my gatherings long enough because it's maybe I need to expand it. Basically, I like this area of gathering and I think that might be more than a 2 times. And this is less over here, and I think that is the length of the piece. So yeah, I might need to redo these gatherings really quick and make them a little bit longer, but that's totally okay. I think this is going to work in general. So this is what it looks like with the 2-to-1 ratio with it pretty much all pressed into place. I did go a little bit past where the gathering was down at the bottom, but that's just because I stopped the gathering too soon. I should have kind of continued it up the curve a little bit. So I just kind of hand pleated the sides. Now what I've done here is I had not yet cut off the selvage, so I still have to do that, but I lined this edge up with the like dots on the selvage, and then I sewed a 1/2 inch seam allowance with right sides together there. I'm going to take all these pins off, trim off the excess, and turn that so that it's right sides out, and then kind of baste along the outsides here from the right side out. And then this is going to slot down into the bodice and get top stitched. Well, this part here is going to get top stitched onto the bottom of the white layer. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. I'm hoping that there is a zipper sitting out in my mailbox right now, which would mean we can go ahead and put the zipper in the back and try this all on. So I really hope, after all this embroidery and all this work, that this actually fits correctly. As you can see, the bodice is on. I have semi-set the zipper. Basically, I'm using a separating zipper, and I believe, though I don't want to swear that this is the correct way, but I believe that the way that you can best hide a separating zipper is to insert it like a normal zipper, machine sewing, etc., and then to fold the edges of the fabric over, like, so that they meet in the center of the zipper, and to prick stitch like through the zipper so that your stitches aren't really showing, but it is holding that press in place. I'm gonna look online and double check that that is the way to do that. I have not done the second step, the prick stitching. I have just set it like a normal zipper and then kind of put pins in, but then 2 of the pins came out while I was zipping it up in the back, and so it probably looks very strange from the back right now. But in any case, it is partially set. I think it's good as it is, and I can do those prick stitches now. The things that need to change, very minimal here, but this is still bowing out away from the body, so that just means that I need to redo probably the top inch of stitches here and just kind of slide that over, tighten that up just a tiny bit there. And then also I had the flare of the waist start just a tiny bit too high, so it's flaring out just a little bit here, but I think I've started the flare here, and the flare actually needs to start like 1/2 inch lower. So I'm going to kind of taper that a tiny bit there, and let it flare out a little lower, fix this little bit here. But otherwise, the bodice is good. It's ready to be like finished on the edges, and it's ready to get sleeves added, which is fantastic. So I have my Dupioni fabric here for the inner part of the sleeves, and then obviously the strips of the sleeves, because here's the reference image again, just in case you've forgotten, the strips of the sleeves all get embroidery on them. And the way that I'm planning to do this, because looking at the sleeves, it doesn't seem like there's necessarily a rhyme or reason as to like where the 2 motifs are hitting on each strap. So I think that the way that most makes sense to do this is to just kind of embroider 2 long strips, because I should be able to fit 2 strips in the hoop at one time, like side by side. I don't think I can do 3 because I don't think it's going to be wide enough after I do the seam allowance. But to do 2 strips and then like do a hooping, move it up, do the next hooping, move it up, do the next hooping, like the length of my fabric basically, see how many strips I can get out of that. I'm going to do some calculations first to see just how many inches of the embroidered strips I need. I did kind of do a basic calculation already, which is that there should be 5 bands on each sleeve. It's really hard to tell through all of the pictures because obviously there's no video of like her arm raised, just going around and counting the strips there. But I think I need 5 of them total. And the longest one, I believe, is going to be about 20 inches of embroidered area. However, some of the others are shorter. So obviously the one that's like out here is going to be the longest, and then they get progressively shorter as they go towards the inner arm. So I just have to figure out how much total embroidered space I need on those, but I'm going to do those as just really long strips and then just randomly cut wherever I need to, and that's going to be a strip, and cut again and that's going to be a strip, etc. If I need to do more than 2 long stitch outs, I will do more. I'm hoping that 2 will work just on the fabric that I have left here, because this is the length that I have left. So I feel like 2 times that length is going to be enough for the strips, hopefully. But I'm going to start on all of that embroidery at the same time as making the puff portion of the sleeve. And then the lower part of the sleeve is just a nice fitted sleeve, but I'm going to do probably just map it out with a ruler and do like a triple stitch, I think, using my embroidery thread in order to get that sort of like thicker diamond stitch look of the pattern there. So that will be later. The sleeves are going to bridge this video and next video because frankly, I have like a half hour more of sewing time before I have to go to a callback. I don't know that I'm gonna have sewing time tonight, and it's already Sunday, so there may not be additional besides like fixing the little fit things here. There may not be too much additional that happens on the sleeve. The other part of the sleeve though is that I am planning to do a fitted inner sleeve. So that I think is the best way to get a poof to kind of sit where you want it to, especially when we're talking about all of these elements going into the sleeve, because we've got the 5 embroidered bands plus the upper, and then we have the lower fitted. And so for that lower fitted to always stay in the same place, it makes sense for the upper to have an invisible hidden fitted section as well. So that's what I have to work out with everything, all of the patterning of the like fitted portions, the 2 portions, and then the upper. I think that I am also going to flatline the poof because I feel like the bands would just wind up crushing it if it's one layer of this. So I think I'm going to flatline it with cotton organdy, even though the dolls are not. The doll sleeves are not. It is one layer. You can actually kind of see through it in some pictures even, but I need something a little bit more substantial because these are much larger sleeves. So yeah, I'm gonna start cutting and powdering everything out. And at the same time, I am going to stick this in the embroidery machine and just kind of like let it go while I am working on everything. I know, wrong Disney character, but yeah, that's all gonna happen. But first, let's go ahead and fix these 2 little fit issues and we should be golden on the fit of the bodice. So I've made all the bodice adjustments that I said I was going to, but then I also decided to experiment on finishing for the strap and the back of the neck. And I just want to show you what I came up with for that. So I took a little strip of just like store-bought bias tape and I kind of top stitched through the bias tape. So I opened it up on the inside. You can see that one side is opened up flat. However, instead of doing right sides together like you normally would, I actually top stitched it through here so that it would match the top stitching that goes around the whole rest of the strap on both sides. I'm not sure yet how I'm going to manage the sleeve portion like that. I just assume I'll do top stitching after I set the sleeve. But this now will get folded in and hand stitched along the edge, but it just creates this really beautiful clean edge with the top stitching on the edge on the outside. So that'll look really, really super nice. Let's go ahead and try this back on and see if those fixes work well. Okay, so I did fix everything. I don't know how I didn't notice this before, but this is off. Like, it's a lot wider here than it is here. So obviously I have something else to fix down here or down here. Again, I don't know how I didn't notice that before. I guess I was just too busy focusing on the fact that it wasn't fitting up here, which now it's fitting up there, but yeah, something's off. So I need to fix that. I don't know how that happened because I thought that I lined up all of the seam allowances correctly, but clearly something weird is going on there. I think everything else though is good now. And I haven't, stitched this back, but I can already see how nice and clean of a finish that's going to be even just from folding it back. So that's really cool. So yeah, I'm gonna fix this, see what's going on there, because that is weird. Okay, I think I fixed it. I swear when I'm looking in the camera here, I am still seeing that it is shorter on this side, but I measured everything. It's not shorter. Like, it's the same on both sides. The one thing that was happening that I think I have now fixed, I have not zipped this up all the way, so it's kind of hard to see, but this little bit right here was curving outwards more, and I think it is now not curving outwards as much. When I took in the upper strap, I think I just got that wrong, so that wasn't even, but according to my tape measure, and like when I put them back to back and pinned through, and they are the same. So I don't know why I'm getting this optical illusion that makes it look like this side is smaller. It shouldn't be, because again, with the actual measurements, it's not. So I don't know what's going on here. Let me know if you think it looks smaller, because I can still fix this. Like, this is something that even once it's finished, I will be able to slide that around because it's top stitching and it's not lined inside, it's just flat lined. So yeah, weird. Anyway, I have to go to my callback now, so that's going to be it for this. I may have time to start on sleeves when I get back, and otherwise you're going to see an outro next. So while I was at the callback, I stitched down the edges here. Really, it's this edge of the zipper that I stitched, and that is what kind of locked in place the fold so that it is right over the teeth so that it closes up really nice and together. I don't love that you can still kind of see like the pulls of the stitches, but frankly, I feel like there's probably no way to avoid that anyway. I have not given this a press since I stitched it, so some of that might look a little nicer once I press it. But anyway, that is done. And I also stitched down the bias on this one side that I had already like prepped while I was at home. Unfortunately, that was all that I had prepped going to the callback because I definitely could have done more hand sewing. Since then, I have prepped the other side ready to be hand sewn and prepped the entire bottom of the bodice. So that is all ready to be hand sewn. So that will probably happen at rehearsal tomorrow, either that or editing this video that you are watching. But yeah, that is all ready for a little bit more hand sewing. So now I have turned my attention to sleeves. But frankly, not much has happened. This is the very start of the embroidery for the sleeves. I got really lucky and managed to exactly fit 3 motifs long on there. It'll be a little bit easier when I go to the next one because these motifs are smaller than these 2 motifs. So yeah, it exactly fits. I did shrink down this one just a little bit. I was going to make this one bigger, but then I realized that actually they were wider than I had initially planned anyway. They were meant to be 1.75 inches wide. These were, well now this one is 1.82 inches wide. So that's what this one is as well. So I've shrunk them all down, kind of added them together. Hopefully they're exactly the same on both sides. I really can't tell. And my machine is now stitching all of these out. So 34 minutes later, I will have the first 3 motifs of 2 of the strips for the sleeves. This is definitely going to be a long effort because I need 5 strips per sleeve and each strip is going to be longer than 1 hooping. So yeah, that's a lot of embroidery. So I'm on my second full stitch out here. I have the finished one up there. Unfortunately, I am about to lose thread chicken because this is how much thread is left on my spool. And yet I have almost no design left too. You can see it's basically just a little spiral. But I don't think this is gonna make it. I do have a whole other spool. It's what I bought at Quality Sewing. But I wish that that thread could finish this motif. This happened on the last one with the bobbin. I was literally like 100 stitches from the end and I ran out of bobbin thread. There it goes. Okay, better stop it. All right, new spool is on. The reason that I stopped the machine is because you never want your upper thread to like come less than in here because the tension discs are around here-ish. And if it comes out from the tension discs, like if you are no longer having tension, you're just gonna get totally snarled on the back end, like on the bottom side, and that's gonna be awful. So you always wanna stop your thread before it gets to here when you're like just about out of the top thread. Another thing that I found out, I looked in my manual because I was sure there was a way to do this, is that on this machine, the way to combine all of the threads into one color, one continuous stitch out, is this little button right here. So if this little thread spool guy is highlighted, then it will stitch all of them out without stopping. So that's what I did this go around, and it made things a lot nicer. There is the second stitch out finished, and I'm going to have to call it a night, but at least we got a little start on the sleeves in this video. So at this point here, I have done 4 hoopings of the strips, and I don't know yet how many that's going to create, and I don't know yet how many I'm going to need total, because I realized I probably need to go ahead and pattern out the sleeves and like get them all cut out and tested, etc., before I can determine how long each strip is going to be, each of those 5 strips. So that is going to be the next step, but that's going to be in next week's video because we have run out of time. I think we got a good amount done though. Like I'm feeling like I'm in a pretty good place with where this is going, considering I pretty much only have 1 week left to do this project since I still need to spend a little bit of time on Jane as well. There's 2 weeks left. Well, actually at this point that I'm doing this outro, there's like a week and a half left before Comic-Con, but part of that, again, is going to need to be Jane. So I have about 1 week left to work on Snow White and get her up to wearable, aka sleeves. So hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you did like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, usually with a sewing vlog like this out on Tuesdays, and sometimes with additional costuming related content or shorts out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Jean and Kim. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!